Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily here, and I feel like I want to cue in the music "Reunited," and it feels so good because I'm back again talking with Andy Greskoviak, who is the writer, two-time writer now, but of the most recent feature, Marshmallow, which is going to be hitting theaters from Hemlock Circle Productions on April 11th, excuse me, April 11th, 2025. Andy, first of all, congratulations! You just won Best Feature at Panic Fest. The reviews that I've been reading and we've given have been so glowing. So just a heartfelt round of applause and congrats to you for an amazing second feature and script.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so humbled to be here talking to you. This was my favorite interview we did on Black Friday, and I think you're the one interviewer that I like bonded with kind of outside of the interview, which is very like we've just always kind of kept in touch. So
Yeah.
I was very excited to come back to Macabre. And even the Macabre review was like a huge deal in our house. It was like a big deal. So thank you so much. And and I'll let you speak, but like, there's something so weird about releasing a movie because there's like the macro where you're like, I hope audiences like it. But then there's the micro where like there's hyper specific people whose feedback you really, really appreciate. And you're one of those people, man.
Um,
I really appreciate your words. So thank you.
well, Andy, I appreciate you just appreciate the connection we made. It's kismet that I think, we were able to have that conversation on Black Friday, and I still sing the film's praises, and I'm going to be singing Marshmallow's praises as long as I possibly can as well, because as I told you before we started recording, I had a chance to speak with Daniel Del Purgatorio today, and I shared a little bit about the experience of just going to summer camp. And one of the things that him and I chatted about that, he mentioned that you two really connected around is that through line of the film is that growing up is weird.
Mhm.
And you have been so vulnerable in kind of the way you talk about your own experiences throughout life. But I'm curious to know, like, at what point did you realize, like, I'm growing up is weird. How do I turn that into a script?
So awesome question. Because when I was 10 years old, so Danny and I had breakfast at Panic Fest, and we were just, he and I could talk for hours and we'll just ramble about stuff. And I told him that when I was 10, in a span of like 6 weeks of my life, my grandpa died. I had a weird kind of medical anomaly. So I had major surgery where I was put under and was in, a hospital for a couple days. And then a couple weeks later, after I recovered, my school had to do an outdoor education program at a learning center called Laredo Taft, where you went and stayed in bunks for a couple nights. And so it was very funny because we were just talking. How I've realized in recent weeks, like, oh, I think this is all just trauma from like 6 weeks of my life that I compounded into a horror movie. But it's also, I tell this story a lot. When I went to Laredo Taft, it felt like at the time the hardest thing and nothing was making sense, right? It was like, oh God, I lost my grandpa. I just had this surgery. Now I got to go do this thing I don't want. And I'm really nervous. And I remember I was so nervous that I went to go like hug my mom goodbye to leave on the bus to go to this outdoor education thing. And my mom, seeing how scared I was, she started crying. And I like in my head in that moment, I was like, everything feels like a haunted house. Everything like even and I love my mom, like just like even like the safe space you're trying to go to, like that, nothing's working in the way I thought it was supposed to work. The people who are supposed to keep living aren't, the body that's supposed to be reliable isn't, the emotional rocks in my life are maybe emotional themselves. And so it really is the age where I think a lot of people and things in life start to kind of take their masks off. And like
Mhm.
Danny and I just talked about that for hours, just the real scary things when you're
Yeah,
12 and how life kind of stops pulling its punches a little bit.
totally. And you're at this weird stage socially, right? Where you're starting to develop a personality, but that personality is still so malleable because you're basically developing until you get to college, at which point, you start to firm up a little bit of who you are, maybe your morals and compass, and life changes will always dictate different shifts in those personalities as well. So if you have children or, death or trauma or tragedy, all those things will inform you as an individual. But it's just I think one of the things that's most impressive about my, and I'm going to sing so much of your, I'm going to pummel you with praise on this thing. So,
Thank you
just
so much.
be
It's like it's
ready.
my birthday. Thank you
But
very much.
it's just like the part of going to camp and being a kid and having to deal with that uncertainty of what is this going to be like? What are the next
Yeah,
days, weeks, months going to look like for me? It's really hard to capture that because as adults, we're writing of our experience in the past, and that's heavily influenced by memory, which is valuable. So I
yeah,
just want to praise the fact that you're able to capture that experience so candidly and authentically, and the little part, just the little things about getting to know these characters so well. And we talked before we recorded about how the almost bad timing it was of the script getting, things going to production and the writer's strike happening. When you
yeah.
when you saw that cast, what was the original initial thought you saw or you had about, these characters, these people playing these characters that you wrote?
It's weird because it's always super humbling up top. Like just anybody signing on up until this point, like Marshmallow was all like it's just one that you hope people will want to make or like that people would be enthused about. But when it's like, oh no, we're gonna work on the movie and help breathe life into it, like it's incredibly humbling. But also the cast added depth to it I never thought was possible. Like I think the kids especially, like I just was writing the script and we knew always that it would be a real uphill battle finding kids who were willing to get as vulnerable, specifically as Morgan does
Right.
in the script. That was going to kind of be so it was just a lot of like, I guess we'll see if we could find them. Like let's see if we could find that kid. And like what an embarrassment of riches we have.
Oh my God.
And then also people like Pearson who plays Caswar, where you just kind of write it as a part and you go, God, I hope we find somebody who just it works with it, gets the character kind of whatever, and then you see it on screen, you're like, oh, it's better than I could have imagined because he just like it feels like those two, the character and the actor, are on the same tempo. It's phenomenal. So, um, yeah, blown away as a fan of many of the people who have worked on our movie. We have a few who are even like legacy status, like Corbin Burnson.
Right.
That's one where you're kind of like it disbelief. Same with, I mean, on my first one, Bruce Campbell signed on, and that was one where I was like, "This movie, mine? Like, did he read this like the script? What did he? What's
Is this a
up?"
joke?
And so that's yeah. Is this the whole time? It wasn't until the movie started playing at the premiere that I thought, okay, it's not a prank anymore because I just it's yeah, this whole thing has been very strange. But yeah, so that's the baseline is an embarrassment of riches. We were really, really fortunate with our cast. Yeah,
I mean, I told Daniel this earlier that it's got to be the best cast of young actors I've ever seen in a horror movie because they all are so real. They bring these like just the little things like Dirk, being the kid he is. I was Dirk, and I'm
yeah.
like
I
that kid
was,
was
yeah,
me. That kid was me, and I'm like he was
yeah,
being picked on, and he was being, but like you find that one person that gets you, and like that becomes your rock for that entire summer, that experience.
yeah,
So it was just such a delight to see not only young actors that bring this to life, but also they were willing to really it's scary. Like they get put through some real shit.
yeah. It's fun. At the premiere, I got to talk to all of them because I met all the kids for the first time, and they're like adults now because you go from being like 12 and a half to 15, and
Yeah,
it's like,
real
oh my God,
fast.
right? Yeah. And so, but I did get to thank them all because when it's a character like Dirk or Morgan, it's like you are being bullied on screen, and it's a lot to separate yourself from it. It's a lot. Some of the stuff that Dirk gets told is really brutal, and it meant a lot to me that Danny and the actors seem to all understand that it's like, yeah, and it's a reflection on this character who's picking on a child. This is not about you. It's not. And even the kid who plays CJ or Billy Sutton Johnson is like a really nice, genuine kid. And I got to think, it's weird to be like, I'm going to beat the shit out of another kid really viscerally on camera. And it one of the most special experiences is because the movie came out and people have really liked it, and the first people to posit any continuation of the universe or a sequel or anything were the kids, and I think it's just because they love hanging out. Like I think they're just like, oh, cool, it's so fun. We all get together and like do this again. And so that, yeah, it's crazy how much it reminds me of like being a kid and having your little gaggle of pals. Yeah, it's great.
I mean, I
Very
think
great.
that's what people resonate with so much is that it does feel like a lot of us can pull something from our own experience and see it in some way, shape, or form in Marshmallow. But I do know that Marshmallow wasn't the starting title; it was Camp Spooky. And I'm
Yes, it
curious to know
was.
at what point you ended up on Marshmallow because I know as far as I understand it, the producers like we're going to change his title, but Camp Spooky is not a bad name, but Marshmallow is a great name. So how did we get to that? Because it makes sense in the term of the movie, but at the same time, you almost wonder there's a story that it has to be.
Yeah, yeah. So Warner is the producer on Marshmallow. He produced Black Friday, and I pitched him Marshmallow on set for Black Friday. I was like, I got this idea. I'm going to go way too into detail, but long
Love
story short,
detail.
I sat Warner down and I said, hey, how come all of these Friday the 13th movies show a slasher going after the counselors like the night before camp starts? How come the campers aren't really ever there? And he was like, well, because that's like horrifying. And I said, yeah, what if we made that movie? What if we made the movie where the kids are being hunted? And he was like, I don't know that you could do that. And so then I sat him down and kind of explained this idea I have with this hook. We get this twist. And he was like, if you could write that, I will make it. And so like 3 months later, I sent him my first draft and it was called Camp Spooky. That was because it was always Camp Elmar, but the doctor was originally called Dr. Spooky. The character of the camp lore was Dr. Spooky. It was Dr. Spooky Israel, which is fun when you're by yourself and making up the story.
Right.
And then, so I sent it out to Warner, and one of the first notes I get from everybody I sent it to is like, oh, it's like, they loved it. It was so fun. Everybody had a really fun time with the script. And we're like, the title's terrible. Like, the title sucks. What is this? So I might have it right here. I've posted it on Instagram a few times. I keep notebooks like of all the scripts I write. And so ever since I gave him that draft, I have a list here of titles that we were like kicking around, right? And there was like, okay, maybe so it's not going to be Camp Spooky. So here we've got then it was Camp, Summer Camp, Camp Creepy, Campfire Story, Campfire Stories, Cabin Number Four, Bedtime, but nothing stuck. Like we just were always, I was like, even like we would just send a word, like it would just be like bedtime. What do you think bedtime? And it was like, no, it doesn't really. So Warner called me eventually and was like, what do you think about Marshmallow? And it was one of those. And I said, oh, wow, because Morgan is like a soft little marshmallow and he's about to be cooked, right? And that happens pretty quickly. And it's kids are like marshmallows. You could fuck them up pretty
Yeah.
easily. And it's funny because he's the producer. So he was like, oh, we just got a lot of marshmallows in the movie. Like I just thought the cocoa and the marshmallow, it kind of made sense. But that it was kind of that where then looking at the kids as these like freshly unpackaged, uncooked marshmallows who are about to, in my opinion, pass that threshold into adulthood. They're going to get a little cooked.
Right.
And so that, and it's funny because I don't know that I was sold on the title for a long time until Danny sent, it's the font that's on our poster now is very like Stephen King adjacent. So it
Yeah.
wasn't until I
It looks
saw that
great.
title in that font and then I was like, yeah, I'm like, sold. Good. I like it. But yeah, so it was for a long time, I think even for a beat, because I'm a pretty like manic person. I think I might have suggested no title. And they were like, they were like, that's not how movies get released. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's Camp Spooky is also what I slip up and refer to it as all the time. Because everybody referred to it as Marshmallow on set, and I wasn't there. So I was just
Right.
always like for a very, very recently started calling it its appropriate title.
I mean, it's so. I mean, there are like I think I. It's funny you mentioned the kids are marshmallows because I actually, it makes perfect sense when you say it. But I was like, oh, it's the marshmallow because the doctor outfit, that looks like kind of like a marshmallow, right? But
Yeah.
I think that it's strange how titles kind of like in this case the title kind of found the movie, um, more the other way around where you didn't start with this like I've got this great title, I'm going to expand the story on it or something. And I
Yeah.
I think that another part of it that I think sticks out as far as what works so well is you have represented counselors that well one you mentioned Caswar. I could not stop watching The White Lotus and thinking to myself, the Caswar and Patrick Schwarzenegger got to be the Pearson and Schwarzenegger got to be the same guy. Like, there's no way that there's any difference between those two.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but
Yeah,
but like
he.
I oh, go ahead, Eddie.
I was just gonna say Pearson. Yeah, and Patrick Schwarzenegger. They're the kind of guy you like compliment for their good looks. Like when you meet, you're just like, congratulations,
Oh,
by the way,
you're very pretty, by
on
the way.
yeah, on embodying Superman. That's no small feat, and congrats, good for you, sir.
But and you also got Paul Soter in this, which is such an interesting surprise to see because we obviously know him from Broken Lizard and seeing in more comedic roles. But here, there's just a tender intense tenderness to him, and obviously with the twist that comes, we're not going to spoil anything here. But
Yeah,
was that another surreal moment as far as like, oh, we've got Paul Soter here on this, and did you get a chance to chat with him at all at the premiere and talk about hey, what was it like making my movie?
you know what? Upsettingly, I have not met Paul yet.
Huh.
What's crazy is that because I've talked to Warner about this. When I was in seventh grade, so this is like 21 years ago now, and I was Morgan's age, was when I really kind of discovered my love for horror comedy and was kind of discovering like, oh, you can find a movie that's maybe scary with some really good humor, like Shaun of the Dead, or a movie that's like really silly with a little more kind of slapstick or humor behind the scariness, like Club Dread. And both of those were movies I watched a shit
Yeah.
ton. So Club Dread was like a very seminal horror movie for me, insanely. So having him in this was huge. Um, yeah, it's crazy because it's just like in a way that I think some people would look at having like a horror icon in their movie. I was like, oh shit, Paul Soder's going to be in this. And then same thing, I got nervous because the movie got greenlit. He was cast by the time I was kind of removed, or I was on strike. So I was like, oh, should we have made it even funnier? Because he's a comedian. He's a funny,
Sure.
very, very talented comedic actor. But as I left it, it was pretty dramatic, and he has some pretty good, without spoiling, some pretty solid, I think, dramatic beats that he handled really well. And it was just, I'm very one surprised, but two humbled that he would like show that side of his acting chops in our project.
Yeah, I mean it's really great to see actors that kind of just go out of their comfort zones, or maybe not even comfort zones the right word, but just you see them outside of what we expect them to see. And I think one of the things that I appreciate most about both Black Friday and Marshmallow is that you've created people that feel lived in already. There's almost an expediency to how we get to know these characters because within the first 15 minutes, I felt like we'd already known them for an hour and a half. And I'm wondering to what extent kind of that was already baked into the script. And of course, you not being on set, getting a chance to see it after the fact, obviously there's some things that happen organically through the filmmaking process. But, how,
Yeah,
how did you approach making these characters, creating these characters and putting them to page? Because again, that without good foundation, it's really hard for
yeah.
anyone to create greatness going forward.
So it's yeah. Well, I'm a thief in a big bad way from my own life. Because like there's a lot of stuff that people have been really, really kindly complimenting. Specifically, there's like a line where our character Franklin says, like, my mom always said, don't let your bad day take your good tomorrow. And I'm just like, that's just something my mom would say to me. Like, that's not, I didn't think of that. That was just, so same with the characters, right? I am fortunate in that my wife and I met when we were in middle school and have known each other
Wow.
since for over 15 years now. And I remember even in high school, I just kind of I did a lot of that thinking back to like our conversations. In the first draft, when I'm just writing by myself, a lot of the characters who were Morgan's friends are named after my friend. Because I'm not thinking when I'm writing it, like how are kids talking to each other nowadays? I'm thinking like what were we speaking like? And it's a lot of frustration, it's a lot of cursing, it's a lot of colorful cursing, um, but also like a lot of Pilar's whole deal is inspired by my wife, and especially when we were younger, because she, even though she maybe wasn't feeling that, like she just had a cool about her, and it was just kind of that, like one of the people you talk to is kind of like, dude, because you're a fraidy cat or whatever, like just and it was a lot of that, remembering how I felt in those conversations, what made it so special. Like, and it's not like, oh, well, a girl saw me and made me feel cute. It's like, oh, a girl saw me, identified that I was scared, and made me feel okay about that. And like,
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. Oh, those are the kids who saw me eat shit. I got tripped in front of them, and these three still wanted to hang out with me. And your conversations with those kids aren't like, hey man, get back up and go get them. They're like, yeah, CJ's a fucking dick, dude.
Yeah.
Like and so it was a lot of that. It's funny. I've been asked like, well, what'd you watch to inspire this, or what'd you do? And it was a lot of listening to the content I listened to when I was 12, watching the movies I loved. Uh, yeah, and just really trying to write in an authentic way that these kids would speak to each other. And a thing I always noted was that at a certain point in middle school, I realized if I swear, I won't cry. If I curse, I'm not going to cry, right? And so if I could color in my language that way, I won't cry in a scary situation. And that's kind of what I did throughout the script, right? Which is like, okay, anytime you think that the kids would finally just start sobbing because they could give up, let's make it into that kind of fun, sweary, fighty frustration. Um, because it's also like always combative. Like that
Yeah.
was another thing I remembered, is that like you're always one wrong word away from an outright argument. And just it was always that though. And Danny and I had wonderful conversations before, and same with Warner, where it was like we really just want kids. And there was a wrong way to go about this, I think, in finding like very polished, like our kids, and I mean this in the best way. It's like our kids are messy and they're kind of dirty,
They're
sloppy. Like
real.
they feel like kids. Yes, yes. There is an ad lib in the movie where Morgan barges into his friend's cabin, and he's trying to wake them all up, and Sam, played by Dylan Friedman, wakes up and goes, "What the fuck?" And that's ad libbed, right? But like, there's so much of that in the movie where it's like it just feels like genuine reactions caught on camera, and so I it just lined up really well. I'll
Yeah.
always come back to that. It's one of those things where it's like I tried to write in a way where I met them at their level, and I feel like all these kids came in and just like amplified it. Like, yeah, I am very excited to see them all have these like fruitful careers, and then to have Marshmallow to be like, yeah, well, we knew
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think
we didn't. We were just
this
we
is
were
this is definitely like I said, the cast is super impressive, but also they've got so many they've got careers ahead of them, right? It's like, they're
yeah,
not like getting into this when they're 40s and like, hoping that the next 10, 50, they're not Walter Goggins in it at this point. Um,
right,
but
right,
there's so much more they could grow from. And, when you think back on obviously this is a very personal story. You took a lot from Black Friday of your own experience working in retail, and I think that's what makes these movies work is that you're bringing so much your personal into it. But from a mental health standpoint, what does that wreak havoc on you at all when you're trying to get back to these really difficult times to create this really authentic piece of writing?
yes, yeah. Yeah, it's really hard because two things. One, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and I will hyperfixate on things, and uh, uh, will find myself in a spell where, like, and this is going to sound ridiculous,
Nope.
because I was
Trust.
playing a lot of in writing this, I was playing a lot of Tony Hawk Pro Skater, because that's what I was doing at that age, right? So they remastered the first two, and I was playing through them, and I was like playing a level, and I remember because I have a really freakish memory, and I obsessed getting mad at my friend Spencer. It was like 5 years ago. I'm playing a level and like relitigating an argument we had in eighth grade about playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater, where I had to pause, and I was like to my wife, like, I'm like worked up. I gotta stop. And so there was that, which was weird and funny. There's also just a lot of personal stuff in the movie, and that makes it harder to receive criticism.
Yeah.
Um, Camp's named after my grandpa. The characters are based on my friends. The entire story, I think, comes from me coming to grips with my mental illness at 12 years old, right? And so all that is to say, the criticism you get hurts twice as much
Sure.
because I feel like on Black Friday, it's like this is my job, and these were the kind of people I worked with and the people I loved there. And this was a lot more like my take on a coming of age story. Here's how I came into myself, right? So I think there's a lot more hurt behind it. I every review that's come out, I don't know if this will be public or included, but every review that's come out, I send to my wife because, yeah, you just don't. I don't know. It's a very obsessive and weird personal time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. I don't
It
know.
does. It does. But and I think the one thing I've always,
Yeah,
we've developed a really, I would consider, I'm going to call it a friendship, right? Because I think, and it's been a bit of friends from afar in that
yeah,
I constantly read what you're putting on Medium, and I've always appreciated your
yeah,
willingness to be honest about your own experience, and then at the same time use that as a place to give others the agency to accept their own. And as someone who, was
yeah.
diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, you know, in the middle of the pandemic after literally fainting and falling over and waking up with a pool of my own blood, like I was
Yes,
like, I never understood what was happening to me before that point. But I think the way you're able to frame that, and I think, I resonate with the sense that you said, like, these are revisiting these things, getting take criticism against them is like you're basically attacking my emotions and my memory of these things.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just find it so
absolutely. And
so
I
powerful, and appreciate you for that.
thank you. It's funny because I think that's those medium stories are really similar in a way in what I tried to do with Marshmallow. I started writing stories about my personal life like 5 years between Black Friday and Marshmallow on a website called Medium, where I will just open up about the experiences I always taught myself to be ashamed of. One that I've cited a couple times is I wrote a whole story about my hair transplant surgery I got nearly a decade ago. And a lot of the anxieties I had in losing my hair, my body changing, aging, right? And that was always something throughout college. I was like, I'm never going to talk about it. I'm never going to tell people it's an insecurity. This is my secret. And as soon as I posted it, my inbox was flooded by people, men, women, non-binary folks who had experienced whether it was hair loss or weight gain or bodily changes, right? Who opened up and were like, it's really hard to talk about these things because you think you're going through them by yourself.
Yeah.
And I really think that's growing up. That's being 12, is you truly think I'm this individual. I'm kind of the main character. I'm going through this shit. It's terrible. Life is scary and it's lonely. And it's because we're not talking to each other about all of the weird changes we're going through. Like there's a part of me that wishes I was a little more cognizant at 12 to kind of be like, guys, we should all be a little kinder to ourselves, because
Hindsight's 2020, right?
exactly. And so it's like, I guess this is Marshmallow is my attempt to kind of be like, guys, you're all the same. Like, it's a weird time for everybody. It's the worst time for everybody. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that it's easy to use vulnerability as a weapon, but when it's used in terms in productive ways, I think it shows up in as authenticity and certainly, I've always appreciated reading what you post because sometimes there are things that like, oh yeah, I used to have a shit friend. I used to have to go to this stupid person's parents' house all the time, and like that was awful. But
yes,
also, learn like seeing that like yes, these are real problems that people are dealing with, and no matter if it's hair, weight, whatever it is, like the way you feel is relatively the same. We all have a sense of body dysmorphia. We're all trying to figure out who we are.
yes,
Society is telling us one thing, we're telling ourselves another thing, and we almost gaslight ourselves into
right.
either not caring or trying to become something we're not. And I think that if anything else, Marshmallow presents an opportunity. It reminds people that even if and I think Daniel touched on this, is like we're still all growing up. We're still all
Yeah,
figuring ourselves out in a world that's constantly shifting and changing. And whether it's technology, whether it's culture, or just this, the way we're,
yeah,
using like changing our language, right? Using pronouns, all of these things are part of becoming and continuing to grow and develop. And it's a reminder that it's not a one-time thing. It's a continuous evolution. But it starts when you're young, and I think
Right.
that's a lot what people take out of, at least what I took out of parts of Marshmallow.
Thank you. That means a lot because that's exactly what it is. Without truly spoiling the ending, I would argue that the twist of this movie is that growing up, the discovery of growing up is that it only gets harder and scarier and more confusing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a part of it, right? And it's really like, okay, do you accept the challenge, right? You want to do this, or stay a kid a little bit longer? And I understand both sides of that coin. I understand both sides of that argument, but yeah, it's a really tough pill to swallow. And I think that's the other thing with hindsight, right? Is that I look back and I just like, I'm really proud of that kid, 12-year-old me, because it's just like, God damn, we didn't make it easy. And you inherit, and I think this is part of Marshmallow, you not only have your own anxieties about the world unfolding in front of you, you inherit your parents' anxieties. And then you step into this environment that just feels incorrect or nonsensical. And we there is a lot of goofy, silly stuff happening in Marshmallow that's very far fetched, but it's like I really hope people can watch it and just take from it that very truly humiliating human experience of being 12. It's my favorite thing about Stephen King's writing. I talked to Danny about this for hours last week, which is that like Stephen King will do 3 chapters in it about a clown, entity that takes shape like a clown and is torturing this town and these kids mostly, and it's gory and it's visceral. And then the next chapter is about anti-Semitism displayed at a prom. And it's scarier than any of the supernatural stuff we just
Yeah.
experienced because, like, oh shit, that's actually real and haunting and horrible. And that is what we wanted to do with Marshmallow, which is like, yeah, there's supernatural stuff in the shadows that gives you the heebie-jeebies as a kid. The scariest thing, though, is the realization that all of the evil is really just human and,
Right.
uh,
I mean, Carrie, right? Like the
adults.
scariest thing about Carrie isn't that she ends up killing a bunch of people at the end. It's that she was bullied
No.
so bad that that was the only like she broke. She literally broke
Yes.
and had to let it
Yes.
loose. And I have to go back to something you said about Tony Hawk Pro Skater because I spent a lot of
Yeah.
time in college playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 and indulging in quite a bit of marijuana. And I had
Yeah.
like a million point record on the Russia level, and I do for the life of me cannot get back to that same dexterity. So when you were playing it to get back into your headspace, did you find that you were as good as you were before, or did something get lost in translation with age?
You know what got lost in age was my innocence. I'm much more cynical now. So when I play it now, I'm way bigger. Like I will not move on to another level until I've fully completed all its challenges. But like as a kid, I think I was just like, this is so cool.
Just
It's
happy to be here.
so cool that we could skateboard. But happy to be here. I'm in the Midwest. It's -20. So I'm happy to be skateboarding in some way, shape, or form. It's a blessing. But yeah, as a kid, and that's another thing I think we tried to put into the script, which is just like there is that inherent sense of joy that you lose, where you just become more critical, cynical. Um, yeah, I missed when it was just the game we were playing.
Yeah. And there is so much of that little bit of loss of innocence, but also sense of growth. I think, even though I think the ending is such an interesting it's such an interesting conclusion because on the one way it gives Morgan the right kind of it gives Morgan this kind of really positive closure, but it also has this very kind of it has a tint to it, let's call it that. Um, and I think
Yeah,
that in a way it's like feel good in the it's feel good in the right way, even though the situations maybe not seem as such. And I credit a lot of the talent you kind of have you and Danny together putting something that one moves as well as it does, but also handles a twist so effectively to the point where it makes you want to go back and revisit the beginning. Like, wait a minute, this was there all the
yeah,
time. It's almost like it's like watching Nope or Us again. Or he's like he was doing this the whole time. It was all right there in front of us. Um,
I don't think
was
you're gonna. Yeah, that is gonna go right to my ego. That was the thing. One of the first things I said was, I want to make a movie you got to watch twice. I want to make something where you go back because I got a buddy who came and saw it at our premiere in Kansas City, who was like, I was checking you up top. There was a couple things that I was like, that feels weird. That's a loose end. They feel counselors are acting strange. And then by the end, he's like, oh no, you did it. You tied the bow on it, which is that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. So it really means the world that you would pick up on that and that it reads.
Oh, it reads perfectly. And one thing I wanted to ask you, especially is, I love that your wife is one taking the reviews, Annie's reading them, but also you contribute
Yeah,
to her, manicure, the nail
yeah.
polish, guessing game, which I find to be one of the most enjoyable things on the internet. Is there a
Thank you so
marshmallow? Is there a
much.
marshmallow polish that she was able to get a hold of for the premiere?
She so here's the funniest thing because she does her nail polish swatches. So she goes, "What color should I do for the premiere?" And I was like, "White, because it's marshmallow." And that's it. That's the end of my thought process. But she's like, "Well, there's 1,000 different shades." And so we went and looked, and that was there. She did a really lovely toasted marshmallow manicure, and we filmed another one of those videos today. And she very graciously let me plug Marshmallow. Uh, Annie has always. It's fun because we're both. I don't really do astrology, but we're both Leos, which we've been told wouldn't work. But I think we both just kind of let ourselves do each other's things and like insert ourselves where we're allowed. And it's a very fun relationship. I will say Black Friday she did a blood manicure where it looked like there was
Uh,
blood dripping down her nails, and that was very impressive. And it's always, yeah, I don't know. It's any time, whether it's, my wife doing her nails, or I just saw somebody did like on TikTok, like a get ready with me. And they did a look inspired by the doctor. It was like a makeup look in an outfit. And it's
that's
like
so
any
cool.
person close or far who's just going like, dude, I'm taking this rock and I'm going to run in my own direction with it. Like I'm going to do a makeup look or an outfit or a nail, design. Like it blows my mind. It's incredibly humbling that anybody anywhere would want to share in this with.
Well, I can't wait for
But
someone
it's
to.
fun. Everybody's welcome.
Well, I can't wait. We start up the marshmallow viewing party at a summer camp at some point because it feels aligned. But there's one last question I have for you, and I've been told it's difficult. I don't think so, but and then again, I'm a huge movie nerd. If you were asked to pair Marshmallow with another movie as a double feature, doesn't matter which one played first, but if you were asked to pick one that you thought would just go well with Marshmallow, what movie do you think you'd pick?
Great. That's excellent. So I got two because two movies came to mind. One
Yes.
is like I think my right over home plate, and then we'll popular. The first one is the one that really if you were to say what movie did you watch to inspire this, it's always been Sleepaway Camp. I love Sleepaway Camp. Ending has aged a little
It still
sideways,
works, but it's yeah.
right, and it's a profoundly '80s movie, and it is like such a product of its time, and it puts the kids at the forefront, which made it, even though it's flawed, makes it so much scarier to me that it's not only are these children victims of a mass killer, but child predators, and like it's just insane, but it brings a lot more, I think, power to anything that happens in that movie. So that would be if I got to pair it with Sleepaway Camp and Marshmallow, that is so fun and exciting, but also Monster Squad,
Ooh.
because that was another where it was like, as a kid, it meant so much to watch like a horror adjacent movie where the kids figured it out, right? Maybe we have to get some high school or like seniors with cars in the mix, but this is really like it's us and we're kicking werewolves in the dick and we're killing vampires and and we're the kids doing it, right? And I like that. um there was such a long time in the script for Marshmallow where I had Morgan call home. Because when I went to my little overnight education, outdoor ed, I was like the first camper they told me that broke the camp's no phone calls home policy because I cried so much. So I really was like, I want Morgan to call home. But then in that Monster Squad Goonies Stand By Me, staying true to those or trying to stay true to those, they never call home. There's never the option to get your parents for help. That's what makes it so scary. So the phone ends up being something else. But so I think ideally I would do Marshmallow and the Monster Squad in sort of a double M. double feature.
I love that. And they'd both be a great double
Thank you.
feature. Danny said E.T., and I was like, wow, because it's the same thing. The kids, in his explanation made perfect sense. It's like their kids band together. They work. It's scary, but it's also, fun and heartfelt. So there's just a lot that
Yeah,
works, and I think in that sense of innocence becoming matured and kids confronting danger, but not letting the danger overwhelm the kids. It kind of meets, they grow through that process, and they're not treated as either fodder or just, too innocent to be bothered.
I think it's your friends as a tween in that Goonies sense of the Monster Squad. Like my friends taught me, even though I am a fraidy cat, I'm a coward. That doesn't mean you can't do hard things, and that
Yeah.
doesn't mean we can't get through sticky situations together. If we could be scared, that's okay. We're gonna be scared together. And I like anytime a parent or an adult comes into that fold, it's kind of like, okay, all the responsibility goes to them. And that's, I'm going to ramble one more time. Marshmallow is very much a movie about that threshold in your life where you're saying in the same breath, I hate my mom and I want my mom, right? You're so close to saying both of those things. And so I forget where I was going with that, but it was just exactly that, right? Where I think when you put the parents in the situation, it completely changes it, especially with the situation we've kind of made here at Marshmallow.
Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't give the kids the chance to demonstrate their resilience and their perseverance. It's almost like
Right.
this, the training wheel, for lack of a better metaphor. But Andy, I just want to say thank you again, and just congratulations on this film. I'm so excited for other people to see it. I recommend everyone that's watching this at this point, and you should have, because this has been an amazing conversation. So I hope other people get that as well. But see it in the theater on the 11th with your friends. Talk about it afterwards. And Andy, I just can't wait to see what you're doing next. But for now, just enjoy the in basking in what I can presume is going to be just a flood of great reviews continuing going forward.
Thank you so much, Matt. This is the best. I look forward to our next conversation outside of Zoom, but also our next Zoom conversation.
Absolutely, Andy. Take care of yourself and talk soon.